Welcome to this edition of History and Highballs, celebrate 150 years with the Bodie Island Lighthouse. My name is Stacy and I handle adult education here at the museum. So whenever you join us for one of these History and Highballs programs, you and I get to virtually spend the evenings together listening to some incredible stories about North Carolina places and people and what makes our state so special. If you enjoyed tonight's program, we invite you to head over to the museum's website at ncmuseumofhistory.org, where you can learn more about our upcoming programs, exhibits, and digital resources. This is also where you can find more information about joining our North Carolina Museum of History Associates. Our associates and foundation provide crucial funding and support to the museum, which in addition to many other things, helps make programming like this evening's event possible. We would like to thank all of you who donated funds towards this evening's program. We continue to do our best to keep our programs free to attend, but there are costs associated with keeping our series going, and we just continue to be so humbled by your generous support of the museum. A few quick housekeeping items for this evening. We ask that you please keep your mics muted throughout the entirety of the program, and to please type any questions that you have for our guest speaker into the chat function located at the bottom center of your screen. At the end of the program, our intern Savannah will ask our speaker as many of your questions as time allows. So it's my honor to introduce and welcome this evening's speaker, Dillon Roy, who's a park ranger at the Cape Hatteras National Seashore. That's a mouthful. Dillon, I'm going to turn it over to you. Welcome. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Hey, can you hear and see me?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much for having me, Stacy. Thank you to the Museum of North Carolina, and thank you to everyone who's tuning in. We're really excited for this presentation. As Stacy said, my name is Dillon. I'm the current lead interpretive park ranger at the Bodie Island district of Cape Hatteras National Seashore out here in the beautiful Outer Banks of North Carolina. And it's a very special year for our district because our district lighthouse outside my window here, the Bodie Island Lighthouse, is going to be turning 150 years old October 1st this year. So we're very, very excited about that. So with that, we've got a lot of exciting things to talk about, a lot of things to celebrate, and a lot of changes and really incredible history to go through tonight. So let's go ahead and get started. I understand that we've got about 45 minutes for the presentation. It's a little bit longer than the standard ranger program we offer here. So I'm really excited. I've done a little extra research, brushing up a few extra facts. So hopefully we can answer any questions that you have at the end. Now, just to give some background to those of you that aren't familiar with the Outer Banks of North Carolina, the Outer Banks are a series of barrier islands just east off the coast of North Carolina in the Atlantic Ocean. And essentially, we're just on sandbars, just soft sand, no rocks, no coral, nothing like that, which is pretty unique. And I think that blows a lot of people away when they hear about that. I know when I first came out here last season, I was really shocked to learn that was kind of all that was here. And a lot of people get really confused hearing that when they look around. And again, I keep looking out the window at all the beautiful lush vegetation that's around here. Well, that vegetation actually is what kind of stabilizes, we'll talk more about that, these sandbars. So the way that essentially happened is as these sandbars were forming with natural movement of the water, over time, heavy rainfall would push the salt table over, create a freshwater basin inside the sand. And over time, strong winds and birds from land would carry seeds over, which would land, take root, and grow, more or less stabilizing the area. That being said, we are constantly changing out here, so much so. We're going to talk a little bit about that. So, Bodie Island Lighthouse, we're turning 150 years old this time around. So for those of y'all that don't know, this is the third version of the Bodie Island Lighthouse. So visitors come here, they see the beautiful Bodie Island Lighthouse, which let me go ahead and get a photo pulled up for everyone. Here's one of my personal favorite photos of it. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. It's a photo I took last year at sunset. Beautiful, beautiful photo. So visitors come to this lighthouse, and after they're, they settle down for their awe of looking at how beautiful it is, they ask me a lot of questions. First thing I normally get is, why is it so far from the water? Did they move it? they moved Cape Hatteras, so surely they moved this one, right? It's too far from the water. No, this one was never moved. It was built 3 separate times. Hatteras and Ocracoke, our other 2 lighthouses, were each built twice to my knowledge, but this one was built 3 separate times. And each time that location did change. We'll talk about that. But no, it was never moved. And it's really not that far from the water. If you ever get the chance to climb up to the top of this lighthouse, and I hope everyone watching this presentation does, we'll talk a little bit more about that at the end. You'll see the Atlantic Ocean is just over the dunes, not even half a mile away. And this light can be seen up to the horizon. It's really quite spectacular. Now, why was it built 3 times and why was it changed? We're going to talk about that. So I've got a map here that I stole from our visitor center, and I hope everyone can see this. I could not find this exact image on our digital archives. I looked all over it all week. So you see here off the coast of North Carolina, you have these sandbars where the Outer Banks are, and you see 3 lighthouse locations where we've been, where we are. So we'll talk a little bit about that as we go. It's important to recognize that and recognize how much this place changes, how chaotic it is. Real quick, the other question that I tend to get maybe 30 times a day is it pronounced Bodie or Bodie? It's spelled B-O-D-I-E. It's Bodie. And a lot of people just can't wrap their head around that. And they say, well, why is it spelled that way? Why you're saying it wrong? You must be. No, we're not saying it wrong and spelling it wrong either. And that leads into the theory that I like best about where the name came from. People always say, well, where'd the name come from? There's a lot of theories. We don't know 100% where the name came from. I can tell you that I think it was 1709 was the first map that we saw with Bodie's Island written on it. Now, the most popular theory is by far all the shipwrecks, a lot of bodies washing up on the shore. Exciting, but not the one I buy. There is some truth to the fact that there were a lot of wrecks. There was a lot of loss of life. We'll talk more about that. But the theory that I think it makes the most sense is that it was probably an early settler's name. You know, I'm originally from Louisiana. You know, we have people with names like Thibodeau and Boudreaux. You know, we use E-A-U-X to make an O sound. So, I mean, if you think about it, how many people do you know in your life with a last name that might be spelled differently than it's pronounced? The ranger that was working late here, he just left a minute ago. John, I can't even pronounce his last name. I hope he never watches this video and sees me saying that. But just another example of how, yeah, names can be spelled different than their sound. So that's why I think the name came from an early settler personally. But yeah, moving forward to a little bit more history of the area and the lighthouse. So why put a lighthouse here at Bodie Island, right? Some of you may know that the Outer Banks is frequently referred to as the graveyard of the Atlantic. Secretary of Treasury Alexander Hamilton actually is credited with saying that name first. And the reason that he called it this was just because of all the shipwrecks that were happening here, that constant shifting sand and these sandbars. Again, we're kind of stabilized by that vegetation, but it's still shaping. I mean, I can tell you firsthand, being here 2 separate seasons in a row, come visit, come back a year later, it's very different just in that short amount of time. Just 2 weeks ago, we had a nor'easter storm and the beach looks completely different just after that week. So this place is chaotic and it's constantly changing. It's really, really something spectacular. So yeah, with that, you're getting a lot of constantly changing shallow shoals all around the area, which are just extremely hazardous for ships. Ships will run aground on these things, and then that constant water from the different currents happening here, the Gulf Stream and the Labrador Current, they'll just tear these ships to pieces. So if you run aground, you're in trouble before earlier precautions like lighthouses were there. So yeah, this place did have a lot of shipwrecks. So Alexander Hamilton and a few others would decide something needs to be done here at this graveyard of the Atlantic. So in 1789, Congress is going to create the U.S. Lighthouse Establishment under the Department of the Treasury. Now, at that time, they're going to start putting lighthouses wherever they think might be best. So early on, they're going to move to the Outer Banks. Now, down south in our other 2 districts, Ocracoke and Cape Hatteras, their first lighthouses way before us. They're going to get lighthouses in 1803, Further south, down at Cape Lookout, which is another national seashore, they're going to get their first lighthouse in 1812. This leaves Bodie Island being the only thing north of that at the time with nothing and very, very dark. And as they would say in the historical documents, literally covered with wrecks. You can see where that theory of bodies washing ashore would come from. So eventually in February of 1837, the Secretary of the Treasury is going to decide that, you know, south of the Chesapeake Bay, we need to examine, maybe look at more lighthouses. So they're going to send people to come and survey the area. And they're going to find the area of Bodie Island to be considered what they say, quote unquote, of great importance. More vessels had been lost in this area than any other part of of the coast here. So it was determined that something needed to be done. Now, come March, the next month, March 1837, there's going to be a lot of debate about where this lighthouse goes. Does it go at Bodie Island or does it go at P Island? Now, at this time, I also want to point out, going back to the shifting sands, another question I get is why is island in the name when yes, we're on a barrier island, but you go from Nag's Head right to Bodie Island, and then you start having to hit bridges to hop to other barrier islands. Remember, this place is always changing. Originally, Bodie Island was more of an island than it is now. It was separated. I think it was 1811. Yeah, 1811 I have written on my notes. When Roanoke Inlet would begin to close up. This happens. These inlets close and new ones form. So the island gets connected to more parts of the barrier islands at that part. And then later in 1846, a hurricane opens what we have the Oregon Inlet, which would separate Bodie Island from P Island, which is where we're now talking about where's this lighthouse going to go? North in Bodie Island or south of the inlet in P Island? There's a lot of debate. People are saying, no, we need it at Bodie Island. It's much more needed there. It'll be much more useful there. People are saying, yeah, but if we go down south to P Island, it'll be more comfortable, a little more protected from the storms. It'll just be a much more comfortable lifestyle for the people that are going to have to work it. Well, ultimately, Bodie Island would win the debate, and they would build the first Bodie Island lighthouse, actually south of Oregon Inlet, so near P Island, but still technically on what would be called Bodie Island, because the boundaries, even though there is now a gap from the Oregon Inlet, the boundaries are still the same for the area. But they're going to build it there, south of the inlet. As we would see on our map here, you have Oregon Inlet here, and yeah, it's going to be over there. So they're going to build that first lighthouse. Oh, when did they do that? Early 1848. This first light station is only going to be 54 feet tall, but you know what? It's going to be right on the water. So for all those visitors that say lighthouses go on the water, why is this one not on the water? Well, the first one was. Notice it's not there anymore. So they build this small brick lighthouse, this 54-footer, right there on the water. Within 2 yards, and within 2 years, because of the uneven sand, again, there's no coral. This is just soft sand we're on top of with a little bit of vegetation stabilizing us. So within those first 2 years, it starts to lean heavily, and that makes the rotation of the light, which first would have been argon lamps, and then eventually they would upgrade to a fourth order Fresnel lens in 1854. But that rotation is just completely thrown off by the leaning tower of Bodie, as we essentially had. And this lighthouse now becomes more of a hazard than a help. So what are we going to do about that? They go in 1858, and they decide that the foundation is just it's too far gone. Sorry, bad idea to put it where we did. So we're going to break it down and we're going to try again. So a year later in 1852, Congress is going to establish a 9-member lighthouse board. Now, this lighthouse board is going to be made up of a few more expert members than the previous organization, people with a little more knowledge of these types of things. So come 1859, they're going to build the second Bodie Island lighthouse. It's going to be taller. It's going to be 80 feet. It's going to be lit on the 1st of July, and it's going to have some improvements to the first one. Besides being taller, it's going to be put on a site chosen by a topographical engineer. So he's not just going to go, water's right there, put it there. He's going to look at how the sand shifts. He's going to look at the foundations, and he's going to decide that the best place would be a little further in from the first one. On top of that, no pun intended, they're going to put a stone foundation down, resting on piles going down in to kind of hold it more steady than the first one. And instead of the first argon lamps and then the fourth order Fresnel lens, they're going to switch to a third order Fresnel lens for this one. So a little bit bigger, a little bit brighter. Now, this second lighthouse is doing pretty good. You know, we got it right this time around. It's not leaning. It's doing well. It's working better than the first one ever could. But then something happens. May 20th, 1861, North Carolina becomes the final state to secede from the Union. Now, early on in the American Civil War, both sides are going to realize the strategic benefit to holding the Outer Banks. For naval warfare, it's going to be very essential for supply and things like that. So at this point on, with North Carolina leaving, the Confederates move in, and they're going to want to hold these islands. So they immediately start building forts, earthen forts, where they think it's most strategic, coincidentally, more or less around where the lighthouses are. Near Bodie Island, we have what will become known as Fort Oregon, real close to the second Bodie Island Lighthouse. Now, at the end of August 1861, the Federal Army makes a, they decide, hey, we got to take these islands back. They make a huge, huge amphibious assault going straight for the Hatteras Inlet to take out those Confederate forts. Now, within 2 days of fighting, those two Confederate forts are going to fall. The Confederates that are here at Fort Oregon, next to the second Bodie Island Lighthouse, are going to think, yeah, no, we're not going to wait to die. Let's pack up, let's take what we can, spike the cannons we can't take, and let's head back to Roanoke Island. Last one out, burn it down. And they're literally going to blow up the second Bodie Island Lighthouse so that the Union can't use it to aid their Navy, and that they can't use it as a watchtower to look out for the Confederates over on Roanoke Island. So there goes our second lighthouse. Really sad, actually. It's actually really sad because the lens actually survives somehow. I'm not entirely sure if they pulled it out first or if just by some miracle it didn't get destroyed. I can't imagine how it wouldn't, but in 1862, the lens is recovered and sent to the lighthouse inspector in New York. So we do know that the lens would survive. Now, that same year, I'm sorry, going back November 1861, when they're going in to recover the lens, they have lighthouse engineers inspect what's left of these ruins, and they actually believe that this second lighthouse can be restored. They say, hey, a few months, we can get this thing back up and running and we're good to go. But sadly, they're going to decide against it. They're going to say, the Civil War had its toll already down south on Hatteras. We already just rebuilt that, made it grander, bigger than ever, that spiral beauty. Nah, don't worry about it here. It's fine. Hatteras is there. Remember when we had a lighthouse in Hatteras and not here the first time? Shipwrecks galore. So throughout the remainder of the Civil War, this whole area stays black, and so much more life is lost, not just from the war, but from shipwrecks. So eventually, they would decide we need to go in and do a third lighthouse. It's time. The war's over. We see the need for it. Let's do it. So when they eventually decide to return to Bodie Island, the Oregon Inlet, again, this place is always shifting. It had moved some 400 yards from where the second lighthouse was. So now, as you can see on this more modern map, that second location that works so well is underwater. No good. We got to go somewhere else. So they're going to decide to head a little more north side of the Oregon Inlet, and they're going to look to build where they are today. Again, we're not that far from the water, and there's a reason that we are. 150 years, and this one's still standing. So they knew what they were doing when they picked this spot. So around June 13th, 1871, they're going to purchase some land for this lighthouse. Fun fact, they actually purchased the land from a gentleman who was one of the first primary keepers of the first Bodie Island Lighthouse. So it's kind of cool, kind of full circle almost, that the story continues. So they purchased this land and they get 1 million bricks from Baltimore, Maryland. That's going to go into the lighthouse, the walkway going from the lighthouse to the keeper's quarters and the keeper's quarters. We don't know how many they used. We know they didn't use all 1 million, and that I believe they sent the remainder to Lookout. We don't know how many they sent though. So little under 1 million is, I get that question a lot. How many bricks? They ordered 1 million. I'm not sure how many they used, but yeah, they get 1 million bricks from Baltimore. They get the stone from Baltimore too, I believe, and they get the iron from I think Philadelphia, Pennsylvania for the steps, and they start construction. a little bit later, in the middle of June 1871. That same month, they began constructing it. And by October 1st, 1872, we light this thing for the very first time. So again, this year, October 1st, 2022, we reach 150 years since first light of the third Bodie Island Lighthouse. It's very special. So they turned this thing on and it's beautiful. At the time, it's a solid light. It's using a first order Fresnel lens, so much bigger than the previous Fresnels that they were using in the smaller lighthouses, using the same size as Hatteras was using at the time. And they're actually gonna light it not with whale oil like most people would probably expect. At this time, 1872, whale oil is getting kind of pricey. Whales are getting in short supply. So the Lighthouse Board is going to look to experimenting with other options, and they're going to decide that here in North Carolina, we're going to use pig lard to light this thing. If you think about it, it kind of makes sense. There's pig farms all over, so the lard's kind of already there, easy access, good supply of it. So a little weird, but yeah, we're burning pig fat up there, and it's going to work pretty well. They're going to have it going for a good little bit. The problem with the pig lard, though, I mean, anyone that's ever made bacon, I think, knows how messy your stove can be after. So just imagine being up there all night smelling that, and just the splatter and the smoke, and yeah, that beautiful, beautiful, beautiful first order Fresnel lens from Paris, France is just caked in this stuff, and you've got to clean it every morning. So there's some drawbacks to pig lard, even though it is cheaper, and it actually did burn brighter than whale oil, according to their research when they were trying to figure out what to use. So yeah, a few changes are going to happen over the 150 years since we first turned this thing on. Fun story, they lighted October 1st, October 29th. It's got these beautiful, beautiful, you can see in the photo, these beautiful glass windows around that beautiful prism. Well, those weren't always there. That prism was originally exposed. They lighted October 1st. October 29th, a flock of wild geese fly into the lens and chip it a good bit. It's got a few nicks and cracks in it now. So as they have a lovely goose dinner, true story, they decided, okay, we should probably put a screen or something around this lens to protect it. So they would decide to modify the lighthouse for the first time by protecting that lens. Moving forward, we're going to see a lot more modifications over the years. So lightning is an issue that happens here. As you can imagine, it's the tallest thing in the area. It gets struck by lightning fairly regularly. I actually have a photo behind me that I'm remembering about now. So yeah, it does get hit by lightning, which is pretty spectacular, but you don't want to be around it when it happens. So the Lighthouse Board would decide in 1884, after it got struck and a keeper was on the steps and got injured, that they needed to ground this thing. So now we have a lovely lightning rod going on top, and it stays well grounded into the ground. Now, when they first opened up this lighthouse, they'd have 4 people stationed here. They'd have a primary keeper and 3 assistants. Now, by coincidence, not necessarily tradition, the 3rd assistant was the first primary keeper's wife. That was just because she was in the trade, she knew the job, made to hire her when they hired him. That wouldn't always be the case, though. So this one, where my office is right now, this double keeper's quarters, this duplex that everyone thinks, oh, it looks so nice to live in. There could be up to 4 families living in here when they first opened it. When I tell people that, they're like, oh no, that's much too small for that. It would have been 3 because the first keeper's wife was his 3rd assistant, but had she not been in the job, it could have been a 4th family in here with them. So yeah, tight fit. They would try later on to petition for another keeper's quarters to be built, but funding would never be approved. The Lighthouse Board would say, no, you're doing fine there, just keep riding. But there wouldn't always be 3 assistants. In 1874, the Lighthouse Board's actually going to abolish the 3rd assistant's job. So the first and only 3rd assistant to serve at Bodie Island Light Station would be the first keeper's wife. Yeah, her job got cut pretty early on, and they would continue to cut jobs, as we'll talk about. It's really sad if you think about it. Now, 1884, we decided we're done with the pig lard. It's just too smoky. Yeah, we can do better. We can always do better, right? We as people, we're always innovating. So the Lighthouse Board would start playing around with mineral oil or kerosene. So they would decide in 1884 to make that switch to kerosene. So there's an issue with that. If you look in this beautiful sunset photo, you see the lovely little white house in front of the lighthouse. That's the oil house. That's where they would store the pig lard. You don't want to store a lot of kerosene in there. Remember, the second lighthouse got blown up. We don't want to blow this one up. So they would have to build a second structure on the grounds to house the kerosene. But the kerosene is going to work just fine. They're gonna, like I said, they're gonna build a second structure in 1896 to hold it. But it's gonna do just fine for a while. 1898, we're gonna finally get telephone services to the island, which is huge for these guys' jobs. You got to realize if they're up top and there's a shipwreck, they've got to get down and notify the life-saving service. Telephone, call them up and tell them, hey, come to the rescue, boys. Now, by, let's see, I've lost my place, I'm sorry. Right here, by 1922, they're going to install what's called a bell line. So basically, it's an alarm rigged up to that light with a line going to the keeper's quarters. So if you're not on duty, if you're asleep and that thing goes off, it's because the light went out. So it's going to wake you up, but it's also going to make note so the lighthouse board can know where you messed up and chew you out for it later. But as they install this, the lighthouse board thinks, you know, there's probably no need for two assistants. And with the bell line goes the second assistant keeper's job. Now, moving forward to September 19th, 1933, we're gonna have a big change. We're gonna switch from mineral oil to electricity. This is gonna come in the form of a generator. Remember, we're still an isolated area right now. This island is pretty remote at the time, not much around. It was a hard place to live. So no commercial power just yet. So yeah, they're gonna bring in this generator. They're gonna mount it inside the old oil house. And that's what's gonna power this thing for a while. Go forward 5 years, August 17th, 1937. This is going to be a big year. This is the year that Congress is going to authorize the establishment of Cape Hatteras National Seashore. It's not going to be set up yet, but it is authorized. This is the plan for the nation's first ever national seashore. It's a very big deal. Come 1940, still no seashore. It's still in the works, but the United States Coast Guard gains control of the lighthouse. May of that year, they decide to make the lighthouse unmanned. They install automation with the electricity that they're using for the generator, and they make it time operated. There goes the primary keeper and his first assistant's job. That would be the last time we had keepers here at the Bodie Island Light Station. So with that, we move into the Second World War. Things are getting pretty exciting. What a lot of people don't realize, myself included until I came here last season, is the war was close to the Outer Banks. And when I say close, I mean very close. There are U-boat remains just off the shore here. German U-boats, both during World War I and the Second Great War, are going to be patrolling the Outer Banks. They're going to be, they call it the Great American Turkey Shoot. They're going to be torpedoing American merchant ships left and right. It's pretty messy out here. So they're going to decide to turn off the lighthouses to try to limit the sight of those submarines. At that time, the Navy is going to work with the Coast Guard to utilize this lighthouse as a watchtower to look for U-boats too. So we see a lot of military action happening here at this lighthouse during the Second World War. Moving on past World War II, we get to January 12th, 1953. This is a very big year. This is the year that we're finally going to establish Cape Hatteras National Seashore. Again, this is the nation's first national seashore. We have many others now, but this was the first national seashore in the park system, so it's a very big deal. There was a wonderful ceremony that involved bringing water from the Old Faithful geyser in Yellowstone and combining it with water from the Atlantic Ocean to symbolize the creation of this place. A very, very special time in our nation's history and in the history of the Park Service. So yeah, very cool. And of course, this area, Bodie Island, would be looked at to be included in the seashore as it is today. So later that year, October 9th, 1953, the lighthouse is actually converted from generator finally to commercial electricity. So we finally get commercial power here. They take that noisy generator out and they plug this puppy in. Finally, we're modernized, right? At this same time, the area of the light station around the lighthouse is transferred to the Park Service. Again, we're wanting to include this in the Seashore. So the lighthouse isn't transferred, and about 100 feet around the lighthouse is not transferred. The Coast Guard maintains the lighthouse and 100 feet around it, but the grass around it, the Devil's Keeper's Quarters, the salt marsh area, all the rest of that land is transferred to the control of the National Park Service to be included in Cape Hatteras National Seashore. A few days later, October 15th, 1953, the light station property is declared surplus by the Coast Guard. Come May that 1983, park rangers are finally able to begin doing historical programs in the base of the oil house and the first level of the lighthouse. Again, the Coast Guard still maintains control of the lighthouse, but park rangers are for the first time in the 80s able to bring visitors into the bottom of the lighthouse and do historical programs. That's pretty significant for the history of interpretation here. Moving forward to the big year of 2000, July 13th, Bodie Island Lighthouse is transferred from the Coast Guard to the Park Service. Everything except for the light itself. The light room and the Fresnel lens is still maintained by the Coast Guard at this time. This is pretty common. Most lighthouses today, including I believe Hatteras, Ocracoke, the lighthouse in Pensacola, where I normally live in the winter, Currituck, I believe, is similar. The Coast Guard maintains control of those lights, even though other agencies control the lighthouse themselves. But moving forward to 2003, 3 years later, the Bodie Island Light Station is placed on the National Register of Historic Places. Very exciting times. Move forward to 2 years, April 25th, 2005, something very special happens. The ownership of the Fresnel lens is transferred to the Park Service. This makes Bodie Island very, very unique in that the National Park Service is responsible for and maintains control of the entire structure, included, which, by the way, the lens still is in there. It is still the original first order Fresnel lens. That's very special. There's so few of those left. And again, it's very unique that we maintain control of that. Other lighthouses in the park system and elsewhere, the Coast Guard will still maintain control of the lights. So this one's very unique. 2012, December, we finish a big restoration project that has been in the works for a long time. And that next year, April 2013, when the season begins, the Park Service is finally able to open the lighthouse to the public for climbing. This is officially 2013, the first time that the public has access to climb this lighthouse officially. So a lot has happened here over this 150 years. There's been a lot of changes, a lot of sadness, a lot of excitement, a lot of praise, a lot of accomplishments, a lot of memorable things. It's very, very significant and very, very important. And I think if we look at just the overall history, I realize I gave you a lot in a short time, and I realize it was big brushstrokes. I'm happy to answer a lot of questions if you have them, and I hope you do. But one thing that I always like to ask visitors to go away from as we talk about this lighthouse in my ranger programs is a lighthouse is a symbol of guidance, right? Guides ships. I think it can guide more than that. I think looking at this beautiful lighthouse, which, forgive me, it's right outside my window, and I can, even still, I can never help but look at it. It's just so beautiful. I think looking at the history here and the things that were learned here, the lessons that we can gain from the history here, I think this lighthouse can do more than just guide ships. I think it can guide us as a nation and a people forward into the next 150 years. So I want to thank you all for having me. Sorry I talk fast. I think I'm a little early, but that's okay. More time for questions, I suppose. I do want to point out that being that it is 150th year, we have some special things happening here. October 1st is the 150th birthday. We have a lot of awesome things that we're planning. We're trying to get some descendants of keepers, the children, to come back and talk about their experiences here, various historians to come and do special presentations. So that day should be very, very special. Please follow us on social media, Instagram and Facebook, and keep an eye on our park website for more updates about that. Lighthouse enthusiasts have Lighthouse passports. I personally have my Park Service passport where I go and get my cancellation stamps when I visit. But there's also, for those of you that don't know, Lighthouse Passports. And here, of course, we have our Bodie Island Lighthouse for our lighthouse enthusiasts that visit us. But just for this calendar year only, we have a very special 150-year Lighthouse Stamp we're very excited to have. So if you come into our visitor center and bookstore, you can get this stamp in your passport or journal or notebook. It's free. It's there for you to come until the end of the year. So I hope you get a chance to come by and see that. I do want to highlight that we do have ranger programs happening this season regularly at this district. Wednesday and Thursday at 11 o'clock, we have a lighthouse program. And one of the beautiful things about ranger programs wherever you go is no two are the same. They don't give you a script. You get here and you're told hit the books, research what excites you, make something you're passionate about, and share it with people. So every lighthouse program you see is going to be different for every ranger you see. And when you see mine, it's going to be different than this. This is something different I put together just for tonight. So my normal program is very different from this. So keep that in mind. Even though you've seen my presentation tonight, our 11 o'clock ranger programs are still worth going to see. 2:30 is a little more varied. That's called Changing These Barrier Islands or Shaping These Barrier Islands. And that's kind of ranger's choice. We have the option to talk about whatever we want that relates to the Outer Banks in the area. So you get a wide variety of programs at that one. Personally, I talk about the golden age of piracy here because it doesn't like pirates. We have rangers that talk about German U-boats during World War II. We have rangers that talk about the history of the Coast Guard, shoreline formation, coastal morphology, shorebird nesting, sea turtles, just all sorts of things. Too many to list. Seashells. So that afternoon program at 2:30 is a lot of fun. Also, starting after Memorial Day, so next week, we are bringing back a popular one, Crabbing with a Ranger. So at 9 o'clock on Thursdays, rangers are going to take visitors, young and old, all ages are welcome, out to one of our off-island trails to go crabbing, catch and release, of course, but we're going to catch some blue crabs, and we're going to learn about the blue crab population and just the culture of crabbing here on the Outer Banks. It's a really fun activity, a lot more hands-on than our other programs. This one you do have to make reservations for. There is no charge, so don't worry about that. But you do need to reserve your spot. You can do that in person at the visitor center, or you can call my number. I'm finding out is on the list. 252-564-4068. We have limited crabbing nets, so you do want to make your reservations if you want to come crabbing with us. Also, we are of course allowing visitors to go and climb. Tickets have to be purchased the day of. They are $10 for adults, $5 for kids, $5 for seniors, $5 for disabled visitors. Again, they must be purchased the morning of. All ticket sales are done at recreation.gov. If you're not familiar with that platform, that's where you're going to go for all of your national park campground reservations, tour tickets, permits, everything like that. So our ORV permits are there too. But yeah, if you want a lighthouse ticket, you got to log on to recreation.gov, make your account. Tickets go on sale the morning of at 7 o'clock. We have climbs every 20 minutes from 9 o'clock to 12:20, and then from 2:20 to 5:40. There's 8 tickets available for a climb because our steps, even though they are in great shape for 150 years old, they're original and we want to keep them that way. Engineers inspect them. They always tell us that they're in great shape. We just limit it to 8 people just to keep those steps in the best shape we can. Because again, we want to hit 150 years once more. But yeah, climbing is available Wednesday to Saturday. Just get your ticket the morning of if you're interested. And of course, we have other wonderful ranger programs in our other districts down in the island. And while you're in the Outer Banks, we also have 2 other wonderful park units, the Wright Brothers National Memorial and Fort Raleigh National Historic Site, with their own sets of wonderful ranger programs. So please come to the Outer Banks this summer, come to the beach, come see us. And I guess now if there's any questions, we can start.
Yes, we have a couple. Kelly's asking first, what was the timeline for the transition to automation for the other lighthouses on the coast? If you know.
That is a wonderful question. I don't actually know. That is a very wonderful question. See, there's always gonna be something to stump me. They are all automated, I can tell you that. You know, I have my meeting with the leads at Ocracoke and Hatteras tomorrow. I'll have to ask them in the morning if they know. I wish I had it this morning. I could have been better prepared.
Barbara asks if there are any ghost stories surrounding Bodie Lighthouse.
A lot. I don't know any particular ones. People come into the visitor center saying that they think there's going to be a knock in the fireplace at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I've never heard it, but there is a lot of folklore and there is a lot of ghost stories surrounding Body Light as well as the rest of the seashore.
Wesley wants to know what happened to the original third order lens that was saved, if you know that.
Well, I'm not sure if they're asking about the third order in the first one or the fourth from the second, but in either case, they were both salvaged, I believe. Since the first one wasn't destroyed, it was going to be destroyed. It was leaning, and you saw it's in the water now. The location they took it down, so I imagine the Lighthouse Board would reclaim that lens to be repurposed. And that was the fourth order. The third order from the second one that somehow survived that explosion was sent to New York to be inspected, and it was found to be in good shape. They didn't rebuild that lighthouse, so I imagine they would have reused that lens somewhere else.
What would you say is the best time of day to climb the lighthouse in order to have the best view?
That's a very subjective question. Personally, I'm always going to say 5:40. I think it's as close to the evening as you can. It's a little cooler. A lot of people like the early morning ones. I get it. They want to get their climb done early and go to the beach. That's cool. I say go to the beach. Well, get your ticket first thing in the morning, but go to the beach first. We have a wonderful beach right across the street, Coquina. Have your ticket. Come here for the 5:40 climb. That's always been my personal favorite. Climb up. It's a little cooler. It's, a little quieter off the grounds. And then that's the last climb. So as soon as we're done with that climb, we lock up the lighthouse, which means there's no crowd in front of it. There's no signs in front of it. You get a pure, untouched photo opportunity of the lighthouse right after. And if you're taking photos at that point, stick around till sunset and watch it turn on.
Mary Grady Bell asks, why do different lighthouses have different patterns on the base?
That is a wonderful question, and I do know this one. So every lighthouse, bit of a long answer to give you some background. Every lighthouse is going to have a unique flag at night. I promise we'll get to the pattern. But so at night, they all flash differently or rotate differently, making that flash. So Bodie Island, fun fact, does not rotate. It could. It's got the ability to have a rotation added to it, but they never needed to. So when it was a gas lamp, they just kept it as a solid light because at that time, well, this one they did. The first two rotated because the first Hatteras didn't. Then the second Hatteras rotated. So they said, well, Hatteras is rotating. Ocracoke's solid. We'll keep this one solid too. That'll break it up. So they kept it solid when it was gas. When they put that generator in there, they installed a flash pattern. So instead of rotating it, it flashes on and off. So it goes on for 2.5 seconds, off for 2.5, on for 2.5, off for 22.5. So, and then it repeats all night. And again, every lighthouse is going to do it a little bit differently. Ocracoke is still solid. I forget what Currituck's is. Hatteras is a rotating every 7.5 seconds or something like that. But with that original lens, that glow as it flashes is, I can't explain just the warmth and beauty that you get from watching it. But so I digress. At night, they all look differently. So you can tell not just where they are, but also where you are. Because again, they're all placed at different points in the shore, right? This one's too far, as everyone always tells me when they ask why it's not by the water. So it's not enough to see the light. You need to know where it is. So on your maps, you would have chart what lighthouses you're looking at and what their flash patterns were. So you can tell, okay, that's the 2.5 on, 2.5 off, that's Bodie Island. It's this far. You would get your idea, right? During the day, you don't necessarily need the light. You can see the land, but they have what's called day markers, which is the pattern, which, as you pointed out, is always different. And the reason being is similar to the flash pattern, they can get a quick reference. So if I'm on the water, I can look over, see those beautiful horizontal stripes, and know that I'm looking at Bodie Island. Whereas if I was a little bit further south, see the spiral, I'd know I was looking at Hatteras. Good question.
She also wants to know if you have any good book recommendations about Bodie Lighthouse.
Ooh, got a whole shelf over here. About Bodie specifically. There are a few that are specifically on Bodie. A lot of them, a copy of one right here. A lot of them are going to be through the Outer Banks Lighthouse Society or Lighthouse group. So probably harder to find, but they are out there. Your best bet would probably be grabbing a book that specifically talks about lighthouses in the Outer Banks. That'll include all of them. I mean, again, Bodie's my favorite, so I want to focus on that. And there are some that are just on it, but yeah, your best bet is probably to look at anything about just lighthouses in general, or Outer Banks lighthouses, or East Coast lighthouses. I will tell you, I believe it's A Short Bright Flash. I'm looking at my bookshelf right here. A Short Bright Flash. That, I believe, is the one that talks about Augustin Fresnel, the French road engineer, actually, that created the Fresnel lens. And that's a really, really interesting story. The story behind how that lens got created is just, it'll blow your mind. But any book we have in our bookstore here, if you get a chance to come through, we'll have a lot of good stuff in it.
We have
ghost stories are downstairs.
Yeah. We have another question about ghosts. So the Ghost Guild Incorporated says, many people believe lighthouses to be haunted. Have you or any other rangers had unexplained experiences at the Bodie Island Lighthouse?
Personally, I don't think I have. I have had a coworker who believes they have. So
love that. Austin wants to know.
It's always a hard one to answer.
Yeah, no, I get that. Austin wants to know why this lighthouse is your favorite, and what about Bodie Lighthouse stands out to you?
It's gorgeous. Look at it. No, I just think it's just really, really cool. You know, it's in many ways, I think, kind of the underdog. It doesn't get enough love because, again, the park's called Cape Hatteras, and there's that tall spiral thing, you know, a little bit south of us. But no, it really is just the prettiest lighthouse we have. And yes, I am biased. That's the one I'm stationed at. But as Stephanie and I were talking about before we started, if you come here, it doesn't matter if you're just someone with a quick Snapchat app or someone with a fancy camera, you cannot take a bad photo of this thing. It just always frames up so well. I mean, heck, this photo I've had in the background for y'all is one that I took myself just last year. We were coming to do a special evening climb, and the sun was going down. And I was just like, well, that's pretty. And literally, I had, my hands were full. We were in the middle of doing opening procedures. So I, like, 2 seconds I've been trying, just click, and one of the best photos I've ever taken in my life. You know, this thing just, and if you come out here at sunset, the photos people get of the Milky Way out here are just incredible. I think really it's just the stories behind it, the tales of all the trials and what had to happen here with the keepers living out here in the wilderness, which I didn't talk too much about. I can talk more about that if y'all like, and just what this lighthouse stands for. You know, third time's the charm, getting it right, and it's just a really, really cool piece of American history, and it's a treasure.
Okay, I think that's the last of our questions, but you got several compliments saying fabulous presentation and thanking you for all this great information.
Oh, wonderful. Glad to hear that.
So, Dillon, thank you for this awesome, in-depth look at the incredible history of Bodie Island Lighthouse. And thank you for all the hard work that you and the team that you work with are doing to interpret this important history and share it with all of us. We really appreciate your time.
Oh, it's our pleasure. It's, you know, it's a job that we love. And, you know, almost all of my staff this year is rehired from last year. We keep coming back because it's such a special place, and it's just incredible. You've got to come out to the Outer Banks and see us. It's
definitely on the top of my list to come back, and I'm sure that a lot of the folks watching, it's now on the top of their list as well. Our intern, Savannah, this is our last program with her this evening. So we want to say thank you so much to her as well for all of her hard work over the last semester. And we wish her well as she moves on to her next adventure. We will miss you, Hope.
Thank you. It's been great. I love history, so this has been a great experience.
And to all those of you who joined us tonight, thank you so much. We hope to see you at our next History and Highballs, To Thine Own Self Be True, The Power of Art with Dr. Larry Wheeler. That's happening next Thursday, June 2nd at 7 p.m. via Zoom. In the meantime, we hope all of you have a lovely evening and stay well. We will see you soon. Take care, everybody.